Since the earliest days of cinema, filmmakers have aimed to impress and entertain audiences with a barrage of awesome action and special effects, and nothing epitomizes this more than Tokusatsu films. For those unfamiliar with the term, Tokusatsu is a Japanese term that literally means special filming and refers to live-action films or shows that make heavy use of special effects, with a lot of these films and shows placing a heavy emphasis on practical effects and using actors in bodysuits. For as long as they've been around, I'm sure many of you watching this video may have seen a tokusatsu at some point and just didn't know it, as the term has been historically used to describe a wide variety of subgenres and types of films. These include kaiju movies, like the Godzilla films, and various monster films produced by Toho, and my personal favourites, which are superhero tokusatsu, which include shows such as Super Sentai, Ultraman, and Kamen Rider. Like many of us here in the West, my first introduction to Tokusatsu was through the American series Power Rangers, which of course recycles footage from various entries in the long-running Japanese Tokusatsu series Super Sentai. And rewatching Power Rangers now, you really do realise just how Japanese some of the show is. I mean, the scenery, the buildings, the costumes, the mech designs, everything about it is just so intrinsically Japanese. I absolutely love it. Since then, I've developed quite the love for Tokusatsu as a whole, going back and rewatching some of the original Sentai series that my favourite seasons of Power Rangers were based on, as well as watching and enjoying some kaiju movies, and, of course, witnessing the greatest Tokusatsu thing to ever exist, Toei's 1978 masterpiece Spider-Man. Okay, seriously, for all the jokes people like to make about how unlike Spider-Man this show is, it's actually so much fun. I watched the entire thing and had a blast. Japanese Spider-Man for Secret Wars and Beyond the Spider-Verse, anyone? A few weeks back, I got a chance to watch my favourite Godzilla film, Godzilla -1, in cinemas again, as the black and white minus colour version only just got a release here in the UK. And while some might debate whether the film technically counts as a tokusatsu, it is a part of the series that laid the foundation for future tokusatsu projects. Regardless, rewatching this masterpiece for the third time in the cinema and getting a few requests in the comments inspired me to take a look at what lost media there is surrounding the genre, and wow, there's a lot of cool, weird, and obscure pieces of tokusatsu lost media. We have lost films, lost TV shows, lost dubs, lost fan films, and a whole bunch of other interesting projects that barely have anything left to account for their existence. We've taken a look at a few examples of tokusatsu lost media in other videos on this channel, but this genre is definitely deserving of a video of its own, so here we are now. Join me and enjoy as we take a look at some of the lost and cancelled tokusatsu media. Ultraman Ace Hiroshima Attack Scene. So I've spoken about the Ultraman franchise before on this channel while talking about 4Kids' dub of the 1996 series Ultraman Tiger. However, Ultraman is one of the most iconic and prolific tokusatsu characters of all time, so I had to find a place for him somewhere on this list. So this time around we're going to be taking a look at an earlier installment of the Ultraman franchise. First broadcasted in April of 1972, Ultraman Ace is the fifth Ultraman series produced by Subaraya Productions and is noted as being the series that began to pivot the Ultraman franchise from a sci-fi mystery adventure to more of a superhero fantasy, with all of the Ultramen from the previous four Ultraman series making regular appearances in this show, as opposed to being guest appearances like they were in previous entries of the franchise. The series opens with the scene of an interdimensional kaiju known as Veracron attacking Fukuyama City, destroying various buildings and killing some of its citizens. Ultraman Ace then arrives alongside four Ultra Brothers and gives a bacon delivery man and a nurse killed in the destruction Ultra Rings that allow them to transform into Ultraman Ace, who later defeats Veracron in the episode. Pretty standard fare for a Toku series. However, the opener of this series was originally slightly different, as the scene didn't depict Veracron attacking Fukuyama, but instead showed him attacking Hiroshima, even destroying the Genbaku Dome. For those not that well versed in history, this building was the only structure that remained standing after the USA's bombing of Hiroshima in 1945, and the ruins of the building serve as a memorial to the 140,000 people who lost their lives when the city was destroyed by the atomic bomb. Morichi Ichikawa, the main scriptwriter of the first episode of Ultraman Ace, had written this scene to show how dire the situation was, as a monster was destroying a symbol of peace by attacking a place of memorial. Quite predictably, the TV station in Hiroshima didn't take to the scene very well, and it was soon changed to have Veracron destroying Fukuyama instead. The scene's existence was questioned for many years, with it reaching urban legend status amongst the fandom, until this image appeared online, proving that the scene was indeed real. The image shows Veracron firing an attack from his mouth at the remains of the atomic dome, in a similar manner to how he attacks Fukuyama in the final version of the scene. It is unknown where this image first appeared on the internet, or where it originates from, and it is currently the only piece of evidence we have to account for the deleted scene's existence. Searches for this scene led people to a Japanese blog site where a user named Makojira, apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, made a post showing the same image of Veracron destroying Hiroshima. The top right of the image shows a timecode along with text that shows that this is playing off some sort of DVD player. No official DVD release of Ultraman Ace contains this scene in any form, so it is likely that this is from some sort of bootlegged DVD of the show that this user happens to own. According to the Lost Media Wiki, as of 2020, no contact attempts have been made to this user, and we have no clue where this user got the screenshot or the DVD that contains it from. Outside of this screenshot, there is no other footage or production images of this cutscene, and there is very little other information about it outside of what has been stated here. If any of you out there have bootleg DVD releases of the show, be sure to take a look and see if they contain the scene in any form, as I get the feeling that unofficial sources are the only way we'll get to see the scene now, as due to its controversial status and content, it is likely that Subaraya Productions would rather forget that it ever existed to begin with. The Lost Kamen Rider dubs. Debuting in its own self-titled show back in 1971, Kamen Rider is one of Japan's biggest tokusatsu franchises in the superhero genre, generating millions in revenue for Toei and becoming one of the biggest brands to come out of Japan in general. The franchise typically follows the titular motorcycle-riding heroes known as Kamen Riders, as they do battle with a variety of supervillains, often known as kaijin, while donning various insect-inspired costumes. Given how popular the franchise has become since the original 1971 series, there have been multiple spin-offs, sequels, and movies based on Kamen Rider, with a new series being released every year since Kamen Rider Kuga's release in the year 2000. Across the franchise's 50-plus year history, there have been many adaptations of Kamen Rider for English-speaking audiences in America, most famously Saban's Masked Rider, which released in 1995 and even had a crossover with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which is where I first heard about the character. And while Kamen Rider never really caught on in America in the same way that Power Rangers did, other countries decided they wanted a piece of the Kamen Rider pie and produced English dubs of their own for multiple shows and movies in the franchise, the most famous of which were those aired in Asian countries such as the Philippines, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Now, there are a lot of dubs in circulation, and I honestly couldn't tell you how many English dubs there are to Kamen Rider or which specific series were dubbed into English. From what I could tell online, the majority of these dubs were created by three companies: Omni Productions, who operated out of Hong Kong, Voiceovers Unlimited, who operated out of Singapore, and Speedy Video, who operated out of Malaysia. We'll go through the ones that I know exist for sure, thanks to this list compiled by Twitter, yes, Twitter, I'm not calling it X, user BattleUpSaber. Special shout out to him for compiling all this information. All of the dubs for Kamen Rider Ryuki, Phase, Blade, Den-O, and W that are known to exist are completely lost as of right now, with us only having small remnants of some of them in the form of clips and commercials. The first 28 episodes of Omni Productions' dub of Kamen Rider Kuga have been found, but the rest of the show remains lost. Episodes 16 to 28 and episode 31 have been preserved for Omni Productions' Kamen Rider Decade dub, and episodes 13 and 14 of their Kamen Rider Triple O dub have been archived online. Kamen Rider Forze also received a dub by Omni Productions, and episodes 34 to 48 of that dub have been preserved, with the rest remaining lost. The dub for Kamen Rider Wizard was by Omni Productions, and the dub of Kabuto was by Voiceovers Unlimited, both of which have been found and preserved in their entirety. Outside of these, it is uncertain whether any dubs were made for any of the other Kamen Rider series, and there is an ongoing effort by fans to try and find and archive dubs that we do have knowledge of. If any of you out there know of any other English dubs for Kamen Rider shows that I've missed here, be sure to let me know, as I started to get a little confused as to which of these were series that were actually dubbed, since some of them supposedly have multiple English dubs that are completely lost. Irrespective of the uncertainty we have with whether or not some of these shows receive dubs, we still have plenty to search for, as the large majority of these dubs remain either completely or partially lost to this day. The lost Majin Garon pilots. So for anyone not super well versed in the history of Japanese manga, artist Osamu Tezuka was a pioneer of many techniques still used to this day, and has sometimes been referred to as the father of manga and the Japanese equivalent to Walt Disney. While he is likely most famous for creating the character of Astro Boy, Tezuka worked on a multitude of characters and stories throughout the course of his life, one of which was the manga Majin Garon. Starting in 1959 and ending in 1962, Majin Garon was a manga series that follows the titular Majin Garon, a weapon who is sent to Earth by aliens to test humanity. If the humans misuse Garon, the aliens will invade Earth, with the series following a group of people who stand up against villains that are after Majin Garon's power. At least that's what it's about according to a loosely translated article from Japanese Wikipedia. I couldn't find much about it in English, to be honest. There were actually 2 pilots produced for 2 different Majin Garon series that were planned, with one being produced in 1961 and another being produced a whole decade later in 1971. The first attempt to bring Majin Garon to TV was made by a company called Nissan Production, not the car manufacturer, but a TV production company that produced a pilot in 1961. Not a lot is known about this earlier pilot, and it still remains unknown to this day why it never aired. There is no footage available from it, and the only evidence for its existence comes from set photos and images we have from magazine articles that covered the pilot's filming back in the early 1960s. As for the second pilot, produced in 1971, there is a lot more information available to us on its production and why it was never aired on TV. This pilot was made by Mushi Production, one of Tezuka's production companies, famous for shows such as Astro Boy and Kimba the White Lion, and was done by a director named Keiji Kaneda. Supposedly the pilot went unaired because the show's agency was not satisfied with the pilot's story, choosing to instead shelve the pilot. In terms of the availability of this pilot, like the 60s one, we have magazine articles that provide us with screenshots of the pilot, including what Garon's costume could have looked like, as well as some special effect shots. Interestingly, we do know that at least one copy of this pilot exists somewhere out there. This is because back in December of 2010, this pilot was actually screened for attendees at the Osamu Tezuka fan convention, with one screenshot from the pilot's screening at the event surfacing online. Even though a copy exists, as it was shown at this event, the pilot has yet to surface online, with not even so much as a clip appearing on the internet. With the pilot not being available on any home media or seeing any public airings, it is unlikely that it will easily be found by fans, since as far as we know, the only copy that exists is the one that was shown at the fan convention back in 2010, and it is currently unknown where this copy is at this point in time. Both of these pilots are very interesting parts of Osamu Tezuka's legacy, and it would definitely be interesting to see the early days of how some of his work would have translated into live action. But until the copy of the 70s pilot is publicly released, and until any footage of the 60s pilot is found in general, we'll just have to wonder about how good or bad the early adaptations of the father of manga's work were. Thunder Mask. In the last entry, we spoke about the lost pilots of Osamu Tezuka's Majin Garon, and I mentioned that the second pilot for the show was shelved after the show's agency was dissatisfied with the pilot. Well, that wasn't quite the end of that project, as plans shifted and the show was redeveloped into a show known as Thunder Mask that aired from October of 1972 to March of 1973. The plot of the series follows a warrior named Thunder Mask who awakens from a time capsule after being sent to Earth 10,000 years prior by the Federation of the Thunder Planet. Once he awakens, he battles the monsters that the Dark Space Demon King Dikander unleashes on Earth in an attempt to stop him from invading and taking over the planet. Unlike Majin Garon, Thunder Mask was actually completed and aired on TV in its entirety. Despite this being the case, the show has still become lost over time, with one of the biggest potential factors contributing to its status as a lost show being the rights issues that the show has faced since its release. From what I understand, production was handled by two companies, Toyo Agency, currently known as Satsu, and Hiromi Production. After the show's airing, Toyo Agency went to Hiromi Production and seized all of the master tapes for the series, claiming that they had paid for the series' production, which Hiromi Production disagreed with, as they had said there was no such deal that was made with Toyo, giving them entitlement to the show and its masters. In spite of their protesting, Toyo Agency was successful and managed to get their hands on the master tapes, keeping them in their possession for many years. Possibly as a result of this rights dispute, the show has seen very few re-airings, supposedly only being rerun twice, once in the early 1980s and once in March of 1994, where only the first, 13th and 26th episodes were rerun on a local station. Since then, the show has never been rerun and has seen no home media release of any kind. While the majority of this series remains lost, we do currently have access to 8 complete episodes and some clips from other episodes. Episodes 1, 3, 6, 7, 12, 13, 19, and 26 are available online in their entirety, with episodes 2, 4, 10, 14, and 20 having some clips and audio available on the internet. It should be noted that according to the Lost Media Wiki, some episodes of the show were supposedly available on pirated DVDs that were released as early as 2006, however I wasn't able to find too much about these pirate copies online, and I'm unsure if these are just the episodes that have already been uploaded, or if more episodes could be found this way. Due to the rights mess and legal limbo surrounding the series, as well as its general obscurity, it is unlikely we'll see an official release of the series anytime soon, so fans archiving the series through home recordings of old airings and bootleg copies may be the only hope this show has of being preserved for all of us to see. Superhuman Samurai Syber-Squad, The Legend Begins. With what might be the greatest and longest name for a TV show on this list, Superhuman Samurai Syber-Squad was a series produced in partnership between Deke Entertainment, Tsuburaya Productions, and Ultraman, and was an American adaptation of the Tokusatsu series, Denku Chujin Gridman, or Gridman the Hyper Agent in English. The series followed a group of 4 high school students who wielded cyberspace-based powers that they used to fight off computer viruses who took the form of monsters to attack the inside of electronic systems. The series aired between 1994 and 1995 and managed to last a pretty impressive total of 53 episodes while it was on the air. While it was on TV in the mid-90s, the show saw a home release through 3 VHS tapes that each contained 2 episodes, and were released sometime between 1994 and 1995. And this is where our mystery begins. This is because, at the beginning of these VHS tapes, there is a short teaser for a supposed VHS tape that would have contained a direct-to-video movie for the series, titled Superhuman Cyber Samurai Squad, The Legend Begins. The teaser touts that this would have been a feature-length movie that showed the story of how the Syber-Squad began, and that it would have been released in spring 1995. However, this never happened, leading some to speculate what became of the film. If I had to guess, it would be that this film was something similar to Gargoyles the movie, or the Batman-Superman movie World's Finest, where it would have just been a few episodes of the show, stitched together to make a feature-length film. In this case, it might have been the first few episodes of the show, given that the origin of how the main characters get their powers is shown in the series, at least from what I've read online. There is absolutely no other information or evidence to suggest this movie existed in any form outside of this teaser trailer, and the teaser being at the start of the VHS release is incredibly bizarre since the film has never been mentioned anywhere else. There have even been home media releases of the show outside of these VHSs, with the show seeing a release on DVD as 2 volume sets in 2013. However, these DVDs make no mention of the film's existence. Given that the sales for the toy line based on the show were supposedly not that great, and the show is pretty obscure all things considered, it's likely that the film was cancelled in order to save money, with some speculating that the success of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers may have contributed to the show's downfall. While this might have been the case, there's no actual evidence to back this up, and officially speaking, we don't know for sure why this film ended up getting axed. Outside of what I've told you, and the extremely small amount of information that this few seconds long teaser gives us, there's no other information available anywhere about this film, or whether or not it was actually planned, or what it could have contained. Either way, it would be interesting to see what exactly this feature-length film based on Superhuman Samurai Syber-Squad would have been, but given the show's obscurity, it is likely that it will only live on as a short teaser trailer for a direct-to-video movie that was never meant to be. Mask Rider NES. Now, we've talked about some of the lost dubs of the Kamen Rider franchise on this list already, but that isn't the only piece of lost media related to the Kamen Rider franchise, as there was actually a video game based on the series that was going to make its way to the Nintendo Entertainment System in America all the way back in 1988. Mask Rider was going to be a localization of the video game Kamen Rider Club Gekitotsu Shakaland, originally released by Bandai in Japan for the Famicom. The game wasn't based on any specific Kamen Rider series from what I can tell, and featured the Kamen Riders trying to hunt down and destroy the leader of the titular Shakaland. The gameplay had a mixture of action and RPG elements, with each rider having a distinct set of techniques or attacks. The game was never released outside of Japan and requires knowledge of Japanese in order to play it, making it hard for anyone who can't read or understand Japanese to play the game. Not much is known about this supposed localization or why it was cancelled, as the only thing we have to account for its existence is an advertisement for Bandai games coming to the NES that also features Monster Party, which was released, and Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, which ironically also ended up being cancelled. Unlike Star Trek V, which was fortunate enough to have a ROM for the prototype of the game leak online, a prototype of the English version of Mask Rider has never surfaced in any form. It isn't known how far the localized version of the game got into development, or how much would have been changed in the process of making the game appeal to a more Western audience. About the only piece of information we have on the game is that it was planned to have been released at some point in 1989, as evidenced by the advertisement that shows that it even existed to begin with. There honestly isn't much else to say about this game, given how mysterious the English version of it is, and if anything of it does exist past this advertisement, it is most likely to be some sort of prototype cartridge that is in the hands of a private collector, waiting to be released for all of us to see and enjoy. Godzilla vs. Megalon, John Belushi bumpers. Back in 1977, NBC did something that had never been done before and aired a Japanese Godzilla film on US primetime television, making this the first and only time a Japanese Godzilla film was aired this way. The film that received the honour of being the first Godzilla film to be aired in primetime was the 1973 film Godzilla vs. Megalon, the 13th film in the Godzilla franchise. The film is known for being one of the cheaper looking Godzilla films, with the special effects drawing particular criticism from audiences at the time, and the film is often cited as one of the reasons Godzilla films are sometimes seen as nothing more than goofy kids' entertainment in the United States, despite being one of the most widely seen films of the franchise in the United States. I mean, come on, this scene comes from there, Godzilla drop kicking someone. I think we can all agree that this isn't exactly the peak of the Godzilla franchise, or maybe it is depending on how you look at it. To accommodate for commercials in its 1 hour time slot, the film was cut down from its original runtime of 81 minutes to just over half that time, making the cut down version of the film 48 minutes. Likely due to this decreased runtime and the film's campy reputation, the broadcast of the film was hosted by comedian John Belushi of Blue Brothers fame. Belushi starred in bumpers that aired alongside the film, and they featured the actor in a Godzilla suit, making snarky remarks about the film and the franchise, which ended with him destroying his chair and then eating the film reels of the movie. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. These bumpers also had a segment where Belushi promised that Godzilla vs. Megalon would not be like Godzilla's other films, and when listing off Godzilla's other movies, he mentions a film called Godzilla vs. Rodan. This film is a pretty common myth amongst the kaiju and Godzilla fandom, as there is actually no film titled Godzilla vs. Rodan, even though the two have fought multiple times in other films. The bumpers themselves were only shown with the broadcast of the film on NBC and were rerun a couple of times after their initial airing, but have not surfaced since their original time on TV. The evidence we have for the bumpers' existence comes from ads for the airing of the movie that mention Belushi's appearance, as well as multiple recollections from fans online. Interestingly, prior to the film's airing with the bumpers, John Belushi actually starred as Godzilla in a segment of the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live. Given the number of references to and parodies of monster movies in the early years of SNL, it has been speculated that Belushi may have been a fan of Godzilla and kaiju movies, so it sucks that these potentially hilarious skits may have been lost to time and only live on in the memories of fans. King Kong that appeared in Edo. The King Kong that appeared in Edo, sometimes incorrectly referred to as King Kong Appears in Edo, is a 1938 monster film produced by a company called Zensho Cinema that was actually released before the original Godzilla film, which kickstarted the surge in popularity of kaiju movies, making this film one of Japan's first tokusatsu films ever made. The movie was actually released not as one single film, but in two parts that were each released a week apart from one another, with part 1 titled The King Kong That Appeared in Edo, the episode of Transformation, releasing on March 31st, 1938, and part 2 titled The King Kong That Appeared in Edo, the episode of Gold, releasing on April 7th, 1938. The film was supposedly made without the permission of RKO Pictures, the studio that made the original 1933 King Kong film, and was about a woman who is kidnapped and her father offering 3,000 ryo, the Japanese currency that preceded the current Japanese yen, to any of his employees who recovered her safely. This version of King Kong was apparently a trained ape that the villain of the film uses to kidnap the woman, although it isn't even known for sure that he was referred to as King Kong in the actual film, with some speculating that King Kong may have just been used in the title to capitalise off the 1938 reissue of the original King Kong. The information we have on the film comes from a 1938 issue of Kinema Jumpo, which is Japan's oldest film magazine, and gives us a poster for the film, alongside other production stills. Interestingly, the poster shows the ape as a giant holding a woman in his hands in the top right, in a similar manner to that of the original King Kong film, but then also has shots where the ape is standing alongside other humans, so it is unknown how big the ape character in the film actually was, as he is shown to be multiple different sizes on the poster alone. Fuminori Ohashi, the man who designed the ape costume for the movie, has been quoted as saying the character was a giant gorilla in the film, but it appears that some of the production stills and the poster would show otherwise. Interestingly, after working on the King Kong that appeared in Edo, Ohashi would go on to be a modelling consultant on the original 1954 Godzilla film, with this obscure King Kong film being the first time certain special effects for the creature suits had even been attempted. Despite its important historical value, the film is unfortunately lost in its entirety, with no copies or footage of the actual film available to us today. It is currently believed that all copies of the film were destroyed in the 1945 bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and while it is likely that the film is gone forever due to these circumstances, the claims of the film being destroyed have never been confirmed or denied by any of the film's creators or producers. This gives us some hope that there may possibly be more copies of this landmark film out there, and we may get to finally see this important piece of history for the tokusatsu genre. Star Rangers and Lucky Aces, the lost Super Sentai dubs. As stated at the beginning of this video, my introduction to the tokusatsu genre as a whole was through Power Rangers, the foundations of which were laid by Toei's long-running series Super Sentai. Starting in 1975 and celebrating its 50th anniversary next year, Super Sentai is one of the longest-running tokusatsu series, following the adventures of various teams of spandex-clad superhero teams as they fight monsters using a variety of weapons and vehicles that make for some sweet toys and just fun times all around. While Power Rangers' adaptation of Sentai's footage retains all of the cool action and badass special effects, the story of the show is often vastly different from the original Sentai series that it's based on, sometimes completely changing the entire story to fit a more child-friendly audience, or for various other reasons. Despite this, Power Rangers is still the closest thing we have to an English version of the show, as English dubs of the Super Sentai series are very few and far between, with only a few of the shows receiving an English dub of any kind, and, with those that do, being extremely hard to come by. Two examples of this are English dubs that were produced for the first two entries in the Super Sentai series, Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger and JAKQ Denga Kitai. We'll start with the dub of JAKQ Denga Kitai, as all we really know about it is that it was called Lucky Aces and was aired in the Philippines back in 1978 on channel RPN 9. For some reason, it was decided that JAKQ Denga Kitai would receive a dub before Go Ranger, despite Go Ranger being the first Sentai series ever made in Japan. There is no footage or even screenshots available from this dubbed version of the show, as it is currently completely lost and no copies are known to exist as of the making of this video, so there isn't much to say on this version of the series, as information on it is ridiculously scarce. As for Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, the show was never dubbed into English on this side of the pond, but like JAKQ Denga Kitai, an English dub for the show was actually made in the Philippines and aired on the channel RPN 9. Titled Star Ranger, the dub was released in 1978, 3 years after the show was originally aired in Japan, and was apparently pretty similar to the Japanese version, unlike Power Rangers, which would adapt and make massive changes to the original Sentai series that they adapted. One notable difference, however, was that in this version of the series, the Go Rangers had numeric designations, as well as their colour designations, in order of their introduction to the enemy prior to the battle. Not much is known about the origin of this dub or who produced it, and there is not a lot of information about the dub available online in general, as we currently only have the first 12 episodes, minus episode 3, archived online via the private torrent tracker MySpleen. The first 11 episodes were also available on the Internet Archive at one point, however these have since been taken down. Interestingly, there is a clip available on YouTube that was uploaded in February of 2013 from user Skeleton Hug. The clip is a little under 4 minutes long and isn't in the best quality, but the comments of the video yield more interesting information than the clip itself, as Skeleton Hug confirms that they have 21 of the English dubbed episodes, but that they only upload clips and not full episodes. They also state in multiple comments that they're open to trading the episodes for other rare Japanese superhero shows, however I'm unsure if there's any way to contact them, as there is no contact information on the Skeleton Hug channel, and no one in the comments implies that they did contact them for trades. It's unknown if they even still have the episodes in their possession, or where they even came from in the first place. Either way, there has been no other footage or information that has surfaced, and there are no other known copies of this dub in circulation right now. We don't actually even know how many episodes were dubbed in total, as the entire series may not have been completed, and the dub in general is just really mysterious from what I could find online. If anyone is able to contact the owner of the Skeleton Hug YouTube channel and see if they still own their copies of the show, we may have some chance of finding these episodes, but until that happens, the rest of the episodes will likely remain hidden away in the hands of private collectors, as we don't know who produced the dub, so it is hard to know who to contact, and an official release at this point is highly unlikely. Wolfman vs. Godzilla. Unlike many of the entries on this list, which are officially produced by the companies that own the rights to the characters and franchises, Wolfman vs. Godzilla is unique in that the film was not actually made by Toho, the company that owns the rights to Godzilla, but was a fan production created by former Toho employee Shizuo Nakajima. Nakajima served as a production assistant on the films Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla. However, in 1981, he tried his hand at making his own Godzilla film with Wolfman vs. Godzilla. The initial concept for the film began back in 1979 when Nakajima and his crew produced a 36-minute effects reel that featured Godzilla, a Godzilla-sized Wolfman, and Baragon, a kaiju that appeared in the 1965 film Frankenstein vs. Baragon, with the Godzilla costume being based on the one used in the 1964 film Mothra vs. Godzilla. This effects reel was a compilation of short films shot on 8mm film and is considered to be an earlier and mostly different version of the film than the one that most people are familiar with today. This version of the film is completely lost aside from the stills you're seeing right now, and none of this effects reel has ever surfaced online. Production on the version of the film that most people are familiar with began after Nakajima and special effects artist Fuyuki Shinada saw the 1981 films The Howling and An American Werewolf in London. Taking inspiration from these films, they decided that they wanted to work on new costumes for the project and make a better looking Wolfman costume, as well as a new Godzilla costume, which was a recreation of the King Goji design for the character used in King Kong vs. Godzilla. It has been said that Fuyuki Shinada worked on all of the costumes used in the film, and that most of the crew was comprised of Toho employees who likely would have had a lot of experience making kaiju movies by the time this film was in production. The movie began shooting in 1983, with filming wrapping sometime in the mid-80s. However, the film was never completed for unknown reasons and has since fallen into obscurity. Information on the film remained scarce in America, with only bits and pieces of it making their way onto the internet, with various production images circulating online. However, in 2012, a prolific fan named Mark Jaramillo, who was able to make contact with Nakajima, received a short montage of effects footage from the film and learned that over 10 hours of raw footage from this version of the film exists. Jaramillo took the information and footage he had to G-Fest, an annual Godzilla convention that is held in the United States, and shared it as part of an impromptu panel that allowed Godzilla fans to see the remnants of this missing film. The following year, Jaramillo invited Nakajima himself to G-Fest, and he graciously accepted the invitation, bringing with him even more footage and information about the movie. Over the years, Nakajima has continued to upload various clips and images of the film's production to his Facebook account to show fans the work that was completed. However, a complete version of the film has yet to see the light of day. There have been fan edits uploaded to YouTube of what the final film may have looked like using the footage that we have in hand, and there is still new footage being uncovered by Nakajima, with his latest post regarding the film being in July 2023. So there is still some hope from fans that he is working on the film to this day, and that we may see his final intended cut of the film eventually. He has promised a release of the film multiple times in the past, even stating that it would be released on DVD in 2016, but those promises have unfortunately come up empty, and the only things we have left to account for this film's existence are the behind the scenes footage, the small clips released by Nakajima, and the film's poster. There's even a picture of Nicolas Cage standing next to the poster. I wonder what the context behind this picture is and how it even came about. Nevertheless, we still do seem to be getting new footage in dribs and drabs, and I really do hope Nakajima finishes the film. Until he finally does unveil the finished project to us, if he is still working on it, it is likely that this interesting Godzilla fan film, the production of which supposedly spans decades, will remain as an unfinished project that only has its behind the scenes footage and various images to prove that it even existed to begin with. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button down below, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more videos like this in the future, and if you guys have any topics that you'd like me to cover, be sure to leave them down in the comments below and I'll be sure to take them into consideration. So once again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Goodbye.